Welcome to Vibe Talks.
Great to be here.
Today we're diving deep into something truly fascinating, maybe even revolutionary. Neuralink.
Absolutely. It's a topic that generates a lot of buzz, and for good reason.
We've got some information exploring Neuralink, its potential, and crucially, the questions surrounding it.
Right.
Our mission today is really to unpack all of this, pull out the key insights, and try to understand what it all might mean for our future.
And the sheer ambition here is, well, it's staggering. We're talking about a direct, real-time link between the human brain and computers.
It sounds like science fiction, but it's actually happening.
It really is. Active development with some pretty profound implications.
Okay, let's get into it then. What exactly is Neuralink at its core?
So, at its heart, Neuralink is a brain-computer interface, a BCI.
Right, BCI.
It's being developed by Elon Musk's company, which is also called Neuralink, confusingly enough.
Ah, okay. Company in the tech.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the main goal is to create a direct pathway, a communication channel between our brains and computers.
How does that even work, fundamentally?
Well, the basic idea is to capture the electrical signals our brains generate when we think, feel, or move. Then understand those signals and translate them into computer language, binary code.
Zeros and ones from brainwaves. Got it. And I heard there are different kinds of BCIs.
That's right. Broadly, you can split them into two types. You've got non-invasive ones.
Like EEG caps.
Exactly, things like that. External connections, mostly used for diagnostics, medical stuff, research.
Okay.
Then you have the invasive kind, like Neuralink. And that involves actually implanting a chip in the brain.
Invasive definitely sounds intense. What does that implant procedure involve? Can you walk us through it?
It's certainly a significant surgical procedure. It starts with a small cut on the head.
Okay.
The skin's moved aside, then they need to get through the skull. So they use a special drill to make a precise hole.
Wow.
Underneath the skull, there's this tough protective layer around the brain, the duramater. They have to cut that too and gently move it aside.
To actually reach the brain itself.
Precisely. That's where the Neuralink chip ultimately gets inserted.
That sounds incredibly delicate. I remember reading something about a robot being involved.
Yes, the R1 robot. It's absolutely critical for the precision needed here.
How so?
Well, first, it uses sensors to create this incredibly detailed 3D map of the patient's brain.
Find the right spots.
Finds the safe zones, yeah. And then it meticulously inserts the device's threads. There are 64 of them.
64 threads going into the brain tissue.
That's right. And each thread has 16 electrodes. So that's what? 124 electrodes total?
Over 1,000 points of contact.
Per implant, yeah. The robot places these threads very carefully. Once they're in, the main device, the chip itself, is positioned within the skull cavity they created.
It's really mind-bending. I saw a comparison to the Matrix, plugging directly in.
Yeah, that captures the futuristic feel, doesn't it?
And then also comparing it to a Fitbit in your skull with tiny wires, which sounds a bit less dramatic.
Yeah, it tries to make it more relatable, I suppose. Both analogies kind of highlight how sci-fi concepts are becoming, actual engineering projects.
Speaking of actual projects, there was news about the first human trial, right?
Yes, big news back in January 2024. The first human Neuralink implant.
Was there much detail initially?
Not a huge amount, which, led to some speculation. Was it real? How did it go?
Understandable.
But then Neuralink released a video on X, formerly Twitter. It showed the first patient, Nolan Arbaugh.
I remember seeing that. He's paralyzed from the neck down.
That's right. And the video showed him playing chess on a computer.
Just by thinking.
Using the Neuralink implant to control the cursor.
That's incredible, actually seeing it work like that.
It really demonstrated the potential, didn't it? Translating thought into action for someone with severe paralysis. A huge proof of concept.
So, beyond controlling a cursor for chess, what other future applications are they talking about? What's the bigger picture?
Oh, the potential applications they envision are vast, really far-reaching.
Like what?
Well, one major goal is thought-based communication. Imagine communicating without speaking or typing.
Just thinking your messages.
Essentially, yes. And then there are more sort of futuristic ideas, like storing memories, uploading them, maybe even downloading new information or memories directly to the brain.
Whoa, okay. Downloading memories. That sounds wild.
It does. It even opens up concepts like transferring memories to a computer or maybe a robot body. This idea of digital immortality.
Digital immortality. That's a lot to think about. The identity questions alone are huge.
Absolutely. If memories can be copied, altered, implanted, What does that mean for who we are? We're just scratching the surface of those questions.
Okay, backing up slightly. You mentioned the chip implanted in Nolan Arbaugh. Does it have a specific name?
It does. The first version is called telepathy.
Telepathy, not Neuralink.
Right. Neuralink is the company. Telepathy is the name of this specific N1 implant, the first-gen brain chip, the one Nolan received.
Gotcha. And the goal is, well, telepathy.
Pretty much. Enabling communication just using the brain. The source material even compared it to Professor X from the X-Men movies.
Huh. That's a useful image. How big is this telepathy implant?
It's actually remarkably small, about the size of a large coin, like a Ru1 coin was the comparison used.
Tiny. What's inside it?
It's got 4 main parts. There's a biocompatible enclosure, to protect it inside the body, a battery.
How long does that last?
About 8 hours, apparently. And it needs wireless charging. Then there's the chip itself, the processor. And finally, those polymer threads we talked about, the ones that go into the brain.
Right, the threads. You said they were thin.
Incredibly thin and flexible, something like 1.4 times thinner than a single red blood cell.
Oh.
And 20 times thinner than a human hair. That flexibility and thinness are really important to minimize damage to the brain tissue.
And what can it do right now? What's the initial functionality?
Initially, it's about controlling computers or phones just with your thoughts, like moving a cursor, typing, that sort of thing.
Okay, so the implants in the brain, the threads are sensing activity. How does thinking about moving a cursor actually make the cursor move? What's the technical step-by-step?
Right, this is where it gets really fascinating technically. So our brains have, over 100 billion neurons?
Something like that, yeah.
And they communicate using tiny electrical signals, action potentials, or neuron spikes, like little electrical whispers.
Okay.
When groups of neurons fire together, they create a tiny electric field. The 1024 electrodes on those Neuralink threads are sensitive enough to detect these fields, these patterns of firing.
So they're eavesdropping on the neurons.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
They record these electrical signals, then those signals get sent to the N1 chip, the telepathy implant.
And the chip does what?
The chip acts like a translator. It takes those complex electrical patterns from the brain and converts them into binary code.
The zeros and ones again.
Exactly. The language computers understand. And then that binary code gets sent wirelessly, probably using Bluetooth, to the computer or phone it's connected to.
So when Nolan was thinking, move the chess piece here,
his brain generated specific patterns of electrical activity in his motor cortex, the part controlling movement. The threads picked those up, the chip translated them into move cursor commands in binary, and sent those to the computer via Bluetooth.
Yeah, and the cursor moved. Incredible.
It really is. And remember the robot. The precision needed is partly because the brain actually pulsates slightly with every heartbeat. Trying to insert those ultra-thin threads by hand would be incredibly difficult, maybe impossible. The robot's stability is key.
Makes sense. Now, this all sounds incredibly promising, but technology like this always comes with concerns. What about ethical issues or potential misuse?
Absolutely. That's a huge part of the conversation. One major concern is hacking.
Hacking. Someone's brain implant.
Potentially, yes. If the device can be accessed wirelessly, could someone inject a computer virus? Or worse, could they manipulate thoughts or feelings? The UN has actually warned about risks like this.
Manipulating thoughts. That's terrifying.
It is. And there are also concerns about control by the company itself. The source drew a parallel to Apple slowing down older iPhones. Could Neuralink theoretically control aspects of the implant's function?
Or inject unskippable ads directly into your thoughts. The source mentioned a Netflix analogy.
Exactly. It sounds far-fetched, but it raises fundamental questions about giving a private company that kind of access and control over your own brain.
It really does. And didn't the source also mention controversies around animal testing?
Yes, it did. Like many medical device companies, Neuralink conducted extensive animal testing before human trials.
Which is standard practice, but
there were accusations reported from some ex-employees, concerns about animal welfare, pressure to speed up experiments, maybe leading to failed tests and needing more animals.
what kinds of issues were reported?
Reports mentioned things like infections, brain swelling, implants being placed incorrectly. Around 1,500 animal deaths were cited in connection with these experiments.
That's concerning.
It definitely raises concerns and questions about whether similar issues could potentially arise in human trials, though obviously the standards and oversight are different.
Another concern mentioned was about control and autonomy, almost like mind control.
Yeah, the source referenced a movie, Bulbulaya, where one character controls another. While maybe not literal mind control like that, there's a worry about influence.
And also about societal pressure, right? If some people get enhanced abilities.
Exactly. Could it reach a point where you need an implant just to compete in society or the workplace? It might stop being an option and become almost a necessity for some.
A sort of technological arms race, but inside our heads.
That's one way to think about it. Now, Neuralink isn't alone in this space, are they? How do they stack up against others?
Right? Good point. Who else is working on this?
Companies like Synchron and BlackRock have been in the BCI field for a while too, developing similar telepathy-like devices.
How does Synchron's tech work?
Their device is called the Stentrode. It's less invasive in terms of brain surgery. It's inserted through blood vessels into a nerve near the motor cortex, the superior sagittal sinus nerve.
Through blood vessels?
Yeah. It reads signals from there and sends them to an implant in the chest, which then relays data to a computer. A potential downside is that it's interacting more indirectly with the motor cortex, which might mean potentially less precision or more errors compared to direct implants.
Okay, and BlackRock?
BlackRock uses the Utah array. This one is directly implanted in the motor cortex, like Neuralink, but it uses rigid, needle-like electrodes, about 100 of them.
Rigid needles sound risky.
They carry a higher risk of causing inflammation or damage to brain tissue compared to flexible threads. Also, the Utah array requires a port sticking out of the head to connect to a computer.
So it's mostly for lab or medical settings?
Primarily, yes. Not really designed for everyday life outside a clinical setting.
So compared to those, what are Neuralink's claimed advantages?
Neuralink aims to combine the benefits. Direct implantation in the motor cortex, like the Utah array, for potentially better signal quality, but using those ultra-thin, flexible polymer threads to hopefully reduce brain damage risk. And crucially, the whole device is integrated within the skull, no external ports, aiming for better usability and aesthetics.
Makes sense. The source also mentioned something called blind sight. What's that about?
Right. Blind sight is another product Neuralink is reportedly developing. This one isn't for movement, it's for people who can't see.
So restoring vision. How?
The idea is to bypass the eyes altogether. Instead of targeting the motor cortex, the implant would go into the visual cortex, the part of the brain that processes sight, usually at the back of the head.
Similar surgery, different brain area.
Seems like it. The concept involves glasses with a camera. The camera records what's around the person, sends those signals wirelessly Bluetooth again to the implant in the visual cortex.
And the implant does what? Creates an image.
It attempts to stimulate the visual cortex in a way that generates a perception of an image in the brain. Sort of like artificially recreating the signals your eyes would normally send.
That would be life-changing for so many people.
Absolutely enormous potential there.
And what about other physical disabilities, like paralysis from spinal cord injuries?
Neuralink could potentially act as a bridge in those cases too. If the connection between the brain and the body is broken by injury.
Like the signals can't get through the damaged spine.
Exactly. The idea is you could have one implant in the motor cortex reading the intention to move, then maybe a second implant lower down in the spinal cord below the injury.
And they talk to each other.
Wirelessly, yeah. The brain implant sends the movement signals via Bluetooth to the spinal cord implant, which then stimulates the nerves to make the muscles move.
Creating a wireless bypass for the injury.
That's the concept. The source mentioned seeing a pig with a Neuralink implant walking on a treadmill, demonstrating this kind of potential for restoring motor function.
Incredible. So we've covered restoring function, maybe even enhancing it. What's the ultimate vision here? What's driving Musk and Neuralink?
Well, Musk's mission statement back in 2020 was quite revealing. It was something like, if you can't beat them, join them.
Referring to AI.
Exactly. The idea was that AI is developing so rapidly that humans risk being left behind, becoming like house cats to superintelligence. So merging with AI via a brain interface like Neuralink was proposed as a way to keep pace.
A way to level up humanity.
That seems to be the long-term, very ambitious goal. Beyond the immediate medical applications, the anticipation is that Neuralink will evolve to enable that silent communication we talked about, maybe direct access to the internet just by thinking.
A digitally upgraded brain, as the source put it.
Precisely. But it's important to remember this is still early days. It's currently in a 6-year trial phase. There's a long road ahead.
Absolutely. Neuralink definitely presents this groundbreaking vision, doesn't it? Pushing boundaries, connecting brains and machines in a way we've only imagined, restoring movement, maybe telepathy, memory manipulation. The possibilities seem almost endless.
They do. But as we've discussed, every potential leap comes with significant questions and serious ethical considerations. Security, control, what it means for society, for our identity.
And comparing it to Synchron or BlackRock shows it's an innovative approach, but the reports around animal testing remind us it's still very much under development, with hurdles to overcome.
Definitely. It's a technology with immense promise and potential peril all wrapped up together.
You brought this topic to us, maybe drawn by that very potential or perhaps the risks involved. Looking at it all now, what stands out most to you from this deep dive? What big questions linger?
For me, it's the sheer complexity. The brain is still so mysterious, and the audacity of trying to interface with it so directly is just, wow. Seeing actual progress, like with Nolan Arbaugh, makes it real. But it forces us to confront huge questions about our future medicine, communication, maybe even the definition of being human in an age of advanced tech.
Profound questions indeed. Well, that was today's Vibe Talks. Keep listening, keep thinking.